imagine going to Stephen Curry and telling Stephen Curry, this is how I believe you should shoot three-pointers. Everybody would look at you and say, are you okay? He's the best shooter. But that's what we do with God. We tell God how religion should be. And unfortunately, the body's taken over the mind. We haven't taken our free will back. We were at one time selling more Pepsi than Kroger. And the reason that happened is because as a child, I used to take pennies to school. And I would be at the end of the line, making sure nobody would see me to buy, a carton of milk. I said, I don't want this feeling. And then money started coming in, but I realized I was not happy. I was arrogant. And I went and listened to this lecture. I sat all the way in the back because I didn't want anybody to see me.
Why?
Because I didn't want to be deemed as a religious person who goes to the mosque.
Do you think that's why a lot of youth are struggling to find the right person?
You don't find love, you attract it. There was a sister who came in, I gave her a relationship test. And out of a possible, let's say 70, he would test a 4. So I'd look at her and I'd say, so you married a 4? She says, I did. I said, you know why? Because you're a 4. So I'm not a 4. That's your problem. Most of us are given bad programs. It's like I dealt with a guy who's got a really bad porn addiction. And I realized that he wasn't addicted to porn.
What was he addicted to? Before we start today's episode, I just wanted to thank you for taking the time out of your day and giving this podcast to listen. And I also wanted to remind you that the only way this podcast will ever grow is with your support and with your help. So subscribe to the podcast, like this video, and now let's get the show started.
Welcome aboard Middle East Airlines.
والمتوجهة إلى
طيران الشرق الأوسط يرحب
مدينة القدس العربية.
Assalamu alaikum, brother Hussein. How are you?
Walaikum salam, brother. How are you?
Alhamdulillah, I'm good. First, before we start, I want you to introduce yourself. But the way I want you to introduce yourself is, when you look in the mirror, who do you see? Like, who's Hussein to Hussein?
Hussein to Hussein is, Assalamu alaikum everybody, is somebody who's trying to find himself to making sure that he dies a believer. Somebody that making sure that he dies submitting to God. Because everybody that you're trying to please, none of them actually matter when you die. And the only relationship that you have is with yourself and your Creator. That's it, when you're in the grave. That's why in the Holy Quran it talks about how Prophet Yusuf says, I just want to die a Muslim. I want to die a believer. So my biggest fear are my low desires, because God talks about our low desires. That's one of our first stages that we have to overcome. And I always think, well, what about myself that I have not overcome, that I've associated that's who I am. And those are the small little things in my life that keep me awake to saying, okay, I have a long way to go to build a relationship with my Lord.
So you don't think that us praying and fasting and doing this stuff makes us believers? Why is it a never-ending journey for you?
Well, the Prophet ﷺ said, many Muslims will die, be raised as other beings. They won't be raised as Muslims. And even non-Muslims will be raised as Muslims. So look at yourself. I'd say, are you a Muslim? You would tell me, yeah. I said, but were you born into Islam?
Yeah.
Or did you revert to it?
No, born into it.
So are you Muslim by choice or by birth?
By birth.
So then what's the difference between you and a Christian who's born as a Christian or an atheist or a Jew or a Hindu? And you all die. Are you telling me you're privileged and they're not?
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
So that's has nothing to do with Islam. Islam is a religion where you have to be by choice. And that's your conversion.
Okay.
That's why we just, we do weekly sessions for adults, and somebody just took their shahada. And we use the word revert, not convert. And he took a shahada, and then you become sinless because it's like a rebirth.
Yeah.
But what did he revert from? How did he revert? That means he had to always been it. Because it's not a conversion, it's a reversion. So we believe that you're born into as a Muslim. You're born wanting to promote good and forbid evil.
Yeah.
Even liars hate being lied to. It's a fixed system. People like being told the truth. People like good things, not bad things. If I give you clean water, dirty water, for 7 billion people on the earth, they all want the clean.
Of course.
Unless they're mentally ill. That's a fixed system. So when we say reversion, he's just reverting himself back to that.
Back to his fitra, you mean?
back to his fitrah, back to the truth. If somebody asks you, Jafar, why are you Muslim? You shouldn't say it's by birth,
Of course.
because you're no different. You should say because it's the truth. So what was that brother that just took his shahada, what was he looking for? The truth.
Right.
So he found that his religion had some, some inconsistencies in it. That's why if somebody comes to me and says, look, show me that the being a Muslim is not the truth and you have a better way, I'll follow you.
Yeah.
But to me, that's my truth. And that's the journey I've been on since 2007, every day, making sure it's the truth to me and strengthening that.
What happened in 2007?
Well, before I share that story, I want us to pinpoint what I'm saying in terms of the truth.
Okay.
That brother that took his shahada, he was searching for the truth. He asked God, God showed it to him in many, mysterious ways. But for somebody to search for something, like if I tell you have that, you have an iWatch on,
Yeah.
I say you lost it. What would you do if you lost it?
I have to go look for it.
You'd search for it.
Yeah.
That means to you to search for something, you must have already had it.
Right.
So what is everybody searching for? The truth. That means they've already had it. Anything that you're already searching for. So that's why when people achieve things, achieve success, and there's a lack in them, that didn't make me happy. Okay, I'm following the Western ways. I've created an Instagram. I've gotten 1,000 likes. I'm making millions of dollars. But I'm not fulfilled. What part of you is not fulfilled, and what are you searching for? Well, there was a part of you that was already there but got hidden by some outside distractions and feelings and addictions and so on. So when people learn how to overcome that and realize they don't need anything outside of them to find the truth that's within, now they've achieved peace. Now they can live life on their terms. Most people live life on other people's terms. And that's what happened to me. I was an entrepreneur by nature. I was doing really well. Ever since 15, when I was a kid, I came up with ideas of just, like we were at one time selling more Pepsi than Kroger, to gas stations. I was one of the first people to sell water, bottled water. I would go to Costco in Canada and we'd sell it to most of the gas stations. I would even reconfigure the way their displays were because they would put milk there.
Yeah.
I'd say, that's your least profit. Let me put water. And back then it would be $35 in a case, and I'd sell it for like $12, $13. And then I would do other things. We'd do fireworks. We would do Barney. I don't know if you know Barney the dinosaur. It's like the most popular thing. I would take it. I don't even think I had my driver license, but I would drive to Gratiot and what's the other street? Van Dyke and Gratiot. And I forgot the other cross street. But it was in a really bad part of Detroit. And I would be next to the police station. I'd go in. I'd say, this is what I'm going to do. And I gave like $50 to the gas station. And the owners kicked me out after an hour because I would sell Polaroid pictures. And I closed down his gas station. We sell them for like $10 a pop. And the first day I sold like 300 pictures. And the reason that happened is because as a child, I used to take pennies to school. And I would be at the end of the line, making sure nobody would see me to buy, a carton of milk. I said, I don't want this feeling. And so I'd always look for ways. So then that happened, and then other things happened, and money started coming in. But I realized I was not happy, and I was arrogant. Because I was thinking I'm making more money than people who have graduated, got masters, and so on. I'd look at school as a waste of time. That's why I ended up graduating later in life, in my later 20s, because of this belief that I had.
You thought you were better than everyone else to go to school?
Yeah, I saw a school. Why is somebody going to spend $100,000 to become an accountant that's only going to make $50,000 a year?
It's a valid reason.
It didn't make sense. So school is important, but it's not for everybody, obviously. And we could talk about that as well and how we mentor people. But it was in 2007 that I realized, 2006, that's when I realized we're dimensional beings living in a dimensional world. That you have to ask the right questions to yourself. When Maryam alayhi salam was told she's going to have a child and no man is going to touch her, she asked the question, how? When other prophets would have the miraculous happen to them, they would ask questions. It's one of the most important things we could do about ourselves. Why is it I'm doing this? Okay, I'm doing something behind my mom's back. Why? I'm having an affair behind my husband's back. Why? Why am I doing this? What is it about myself that I need to be fulfilled at this level? What happens is most people don't ask that question until they're in a state of trauma, until they're busted, until they're caught.
Yeah.
And that's what I do as a counselor. So then parents will bring their kids in, or marriages will come in, and that's easy for me. Or drug addicts will come in, or people with really bad health conditions will come in. That's easy for me because they've already hit rock bottom.
Yeah.
But my cause is, let's not wait for some bad thing to happen for you to change. Let's change in good times. And that's been my cause.
That's what happened to you in 2006? You hit the rock bottom?
No. 2006, I was going out with my friends because that was my world. But I realized there wasn't much growth there. You know, think about what you do with your friends. You talk about sports, you go out, talk about mundane things.
Right.
And you can never reflect on it and say, oh, wow, that was so powerful. That's why if you hang out with 9 broke people, you're going to be the 10th. You hang out with whoever you hang out with, whatever environment, that's who you are. And you have to take a real reflect on that and saying, will my future self be happy with this?
Mm.
If I had kids, would I allow my kids to hang out with such people? That's what's one of the detrimental problems that are happening in schools, especially public schools, that they're around such an environment of people and they're thinking that's the norm and that's the right way to be. And I tell people it's not, it's just familiar. So I was sitting and there was a brother, he's a real estate agent, Ali Abdullah, Dave Abdullah's brother.
Yeah.
I was close to him. We used to work out together at a gym called the Fairlane Club. I'm going out and I'm getting dressed and I had a whisper in my ear. And it was very clear because Ali Abdullah came to me and says, come listen to this lecture during Muharram. I said, no, I got to go out with my friends. I promised them. So just come on. I told them no. Because remember, you can't tell your friends no. They're your lives. Those are your gods. That's why we cause a lot of shirk. One of the things that we associate partners with is our friends. If our friends don't pray, then we're not going to pray. If our friends take off hijab, then we're going to take it off. That's our God.
Yeah.
Those are our idols. That's why we treat our friends better than our parents.
We do.
Because if we're harsh to our parents, we know they're not going anywhere. But our friends,
We don't want to lose them.
so if we're harsh to them, we lose them.
Yeah.
And God says, anything that you get in life, anything, your money, your children, none of it will make you happy when you live that state of hypocrisy. That's why your mom changed your diaper, took care of you, woke up at 2 o'clock in the morning. And I go ask your friends for $5, or go tell your friends to wake you up at 2 o'clock in the morning. You know, they'll throw your pillow at you. They'll say, get out of here. What are you doing? Your mom never did that. Now you're 16, Mom, what do you want? That's how you know you've lost yourself to this world. You've become a mushrik, somebody who associates a partner to God. Because God has given you your parents. You didn't ask for them. God's given you this existence. You didn't ask for it. So God is saying, how do you not appreciate that?
Yeah.
So that ungratefulness seeds not only to within your body that you eventually become sick, it seeds that anything that you get. So you could get married, the same person, but if you're in a state of ungratitude, it will not make you happy. It's impossible. That's the law of God. So I was sitting and I was wanting to go to the lecture, out with my friends, and I had a whisper in my ear. There was nobody around me that I must go. It was very specific and it was to my heart. And I froze and I looked around thinking there were people around me. There was nobody around me.
Wow.
So I said, okay, I shut off my phone because I knew I was going to get a lot of missed calls. And I went and listened to this lecture. It was at Dara Hikmah, the Mosque of Sheikh Ilahi. And I sat all the way in the back because I didn't want anybody to see me.
Why?
Because I didn't want to be deemed as a religious person who goes to the mosque.
Okay.
So I said, and my friends were not of that type. So I said, let me go. So I went And within 20 minutes, because I thought I had my beliefs pretty fixed, I thought I had my life pretty figured out. So the person asked a simple question: if you had things figured out, then why are you happy? Why are you unhappy? It was like he was talking to me. And how did you go and get your beliefs? Where'd you get them from? Are they your personal beliefs? In a nice way, he said, who the hell are you to share your personal beliefs? It's like, imagine going to Stephen Curry and telling Stephen Curry, this is how I believe you should shoot 3-pointers. Everybody would look at you and say, are you okay?
Yeah.
He's the best shooter. Well, that's what we do with God. We tell God how religion should be and our subtleties in how we behave. So in 20 minutes, my whole life changed. And all my friends the next day was like, where were you? You don't know what you missed. I was like, man, you don't know what you missed. And some of those friends came to the lecture the next day because they were just blown away it was an instant metamorphosis.
Your shift and
It was
attitude.
instant.
Yeah.
It's in the Quran. It could happen because even the magicians that were next to Pharaoh, when Musa alayhi salam showed them the miracle of what he did, instantly they had a metamorphosis changed. And Pharaoh said, well, I'll kill you. They said, we don't care. We believe in the Lord of Musa and Harun. And if you kill us, it's okay because we're going to the next world.
Yeah.
And he killed them, but they didn't care because of that instant metamorphosis. That was more real than anything in this physical world. Then there was a sister, one of the girls that called me, says, well, where are you? Why didn't you answer your phone? I said, I was listening to this lecture, it changed my life. And she was a Catholic. And she goes, well, I want to go. Something's telling me to go. I said, well, let's go. So she went. I said, you have to wear hijab. She never wore a hijab before because it's a mosque. She went, and the second day he spoke about Catholicism and the issues with Christianity. And and he spoke about why do we have to take a sin for something that happened? Why did Jesus have to die on a cross for somebody else's sin? The atonement, Jesus Christ. The same thing that happened to me the first day happened to her the second, and a few others.
Yeah.
And my prayer was, okay, God, my friends are my life. Please, they're good people, but I know where I want to go. It's not someplace I don't think they're ready, and I don't think I could handle both lives. Please remove all my friends away from me that remove me away from you. And that's the most powerful prayer.
That's a very specific prayer too.
You submit to God. You're doing this podcast, God, if it brings me closer to you, God, keep it. If it doesn't, remove it.
Right.
In every project, people say, how do we have millions of dollars worth of projects? Just do that prayer. God, we have, let's say at Wise Academy, God takes it tomorrow. Something happens, it gets shut down. It's not ours. God says, I have to take that away to replace it with something better.
Are you genuinely content with something like Wise going away? Like, do you ever think about it? You know how sometimes we sit and we think of what's the worst case scenario that could happen in my life right now? Like, let's say everything's going well and you sit and you want to reflect and like, what's the worst thing that can happen to me right now? And let's say you think about like something like Wise perishing. Mm-hmm. What do you feel in that moment?
Well, so that's the biggest problem in society. Society is in such a state of lack. That's why Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, they make millions and billions of dollars because you're dependent on them for you to feel satisfied. Mm-hmm. Somebody needs a relationship to feel love. They need success to feel worthy. They need praise to feel gratification. They need something outside of them to feel within. That's why the most successful people know how to self-soothe. And one of the things that I realized, like if I were to ask you, Jaffa, who are you?
I think about this a lot because of the first question I asked you. So I thought, like, if I look in the mirror, who am I? Mm-hmm. I would describe myself as a vessel that is doing its best to get the opportunity to make the people around me better.
Okay. So are you doing it through a podcast?
Currently, yes.
So are you a podcaster?
Yes, you can say that.
Okay. Are your parents still alive?
Alhamdulillah.
So are you a son?
Yes.
Do you have siblings?
Yes.
So are you a brother and a sister?
Of course.
Okay. Are you married?
Yes.
Okay. So are you a husband?
Yes.
Okay. Do you have children?
No.
Not yet. But okay. So let's remove. Now let's say tomorrow The podcast is removed. Your parents go back to Allah. Your wife goes back to Allah. Your siblings go back to Allah. So all those things that you just labeled cannot be who you are, because those are transient things.
Right.
Anything that could change is not who you are.
But the vessel, I am still the vessel that's trying to make everyone around me better.
Exactly. So if you tell me if wise goes away, well, wise isn't mine. These are all transient. Everything in your life is transient. We hold on to it because it's something that we identify with.
Right.
That's why people commit suicide. They label them as that thing. What happened? I lost my job. Oh my God, my life is over. What happened? Oh, I love that person. He told me he doesn't love me anymore. We really thought it was the job sustaining us. We really thought it was that relationship giving us love. We really thought the doctor's the one that healed us. And it's only God.
Yeah.
Allah is the one that you came from. Allah is the one you're going back. That's it. You're just this consciousness within a body. But as soon as you die, what do you leave behind?
How you served people and what you did with.
No, but what do you leave behind? Not what do you take.
Nothing.
But what do we take to the grave? The body.
Yeah.
But look at the body. You notice we're fulfilling the body. The body is the one that wants these things. The body is the one that wants these desires. It's not what you really want.
Right.
And unfortunately, the body's taken over the mind. We haven't taken our free will back. And that's the most interesting about when you take your free will back and tell the body, no, I'm the one in control. And the simplest way I could say it is, imagine you're in a dream. In your dream, you have a podcast, millions of people are watching. In the dream, you're married with 4 kids. In the dream, you have your private jet. In the dream, you have your own private beach. In your dream, you are sipping lemonade in the waves of Cancun. In the dream, you could go to any place in the world. In the dream, you have your own private yacht. Right when you wake up, you're like, oh my God, that was amazing. But what else did you realize right when you wake up?
It was never there.
It was never there. None of it was yours. That's what happens in the next life. As soon as you die, you were like, oh my God, that was all an illusion. Why did I allow my body that's not even with me right now, and now I'm giving another body, why did I worship this body? Why? I took off my hijab because my job, or because I wanted to marry or attract a certain person. I stopped praying. I started doing drugs. For what? To fulfill this body that's not with me? And that's Shaitan's biggest trick. It gets you to worship the body thinking that's what's going to make you happy forever. And that was my biggest issue. I would go on vacations, I would do things, and nothing ever would fulfill me.
You wouldn't feel right.
Ever. And when I realized through that lecture that all you need is to follow God's ways. And don't share your own beliefs. Go get your beliefs from God. Well, how do you do that? Well, we have the Holy Quran, which is the closest manifestation to God. Read it. I tell people, just first read it from front to back. Then understand the first surah, Surah Fatiha, the opening. Thee do you worship. Thee do you ask for help. You don't need to ask for anybody but Allah. So that was my mission. I became so obsessed over it. I said, okay, I'm going to apply it in my own life. I started applying the principles, and I would see instant changes. So most of us think we need to work 30 years to achieve wealth or go do something. Allah's system is actually in the reverse. You pray for it, you feel it. The Prophet says, or the Imam says, open the door when you pray for something, act like it's already there.
Yeah.
So, and the reason why I got into that is because I would meet people, just like, let's say if we interviewed parents that are coming to wise their kids, they would say, yeah, I went to the shrine of Imam Hussein. I went to the Kaaba. I had this ailment. I was at the hospital. I prayed. And it's gone. My meningitis is gone. I had 2 weeks to live. MS. So many things. And because my first phase was doing youth programs.
Right.
So we would teach kids how to pray, teach kids how to read the Holy Quran. We would bring them together through basketball. We started with 8 kids. And then I was tested because then it was never miss. I just got married. So I said, I can never miss a Saturday. And I never did.
Even while you were married?
Never miss a Saturday. We didn't even take trips. We couldn't. And because that was my promise to God. And I was very loyal. So now I took my loyalty, which was my friends, I just put it to God. I said, whatever promises I make, and people would mock me. What are you doing? The people I used to play basketball with would come to the gym during our youth program and say, what are you doing? And I have my own philosophy of why they would say that. But then from there, it grew to about 80 people. And then I asked Allah, bring me new friends that bring me closer to you. And the first friend He brought me was Hussein Charara. That was the lecture that I went to.
His
lecture.
Yeah.
And then somehow we connected at the same gym, because that's where he would go work out before he'd give his speeches. And then we just clicked. So I told him I'm going to start this youth programs. He says, I'm buying a camp. So I would go there and I would start helping him. We'd clean up. We'd get the camp ready. And then within a year, the youth program grew. And then we did it for 3-4 years. We would have, lessons, Islamic lessons. They would take quizzes. We would do competitions. We'd give out prizes. And there was even non-Muslims bringing their kids to the program.
Did you feel weird seeing non-Muslims come to these events?
Not at all.
Not weird as in why are they here, but like in a state of like shock or like awe, like these people like.
Well, I know for fact that I was a Muslim by birth for a long time. It wasn't by choice. And the only reason I was a Muslim is because my parents were Muslims. That's why when I deal with prostitutes in the community, I deal with drug addicts, and I look at them, if I was in their environment, and I tell them, I'd probably have done the same thing. Mm-hmm. So how am I any different? One of the things that we are, in our program, I brought a brother. I said, if there are any single sisters out there, what are some of the characteristics you look for? So what if I tell you there's somebody who's gone to the Hajj, who prays, who's modest, who keeps his eyes only to what he's supposed to. He is a good person, he's generous, he's compassionate, and he's very good looking. And, by the way, he drives a Lamborghini. I said, many of you would be interested. Then I brought that brother on stage. He was all those things, but there was one thing he was different. He was black. I said, now go to your parents and tell them you're interested. There's a brother. And tell them all these things, but don't mention that he's black and you brought him home. What would happen to most of you?
They probably reject them.
Of course, that's one of the problems within our community. And we ask ourselves, why is our community not changing? Even in Lebanon, I'm from Lebanon, and we have, unfortunately, what's happening to the Palestinians. But I've been in circles where they would speak so bad about the Palestinians when things went really bad.
Right.
But now they're protesting for them. And I find that somewhat hypocritical. Why is it in good times, when you had an opportunity to speak good and help them, you reserved to say how they were lower class citizens? But now you want to
uplift them.
And we say, why do we have problems within the Middle East? Why do we have the problems? Imagine, Jaffer, you want to get married and your mom says, where are you from? Where's she from? And you live in Dearborn Heights. And you tell her she's from Dearborn. Ma, I can't marry somebody from Dearborn. That's what happens in Lebanon. If somebody's from Vintage Bell at the time and somebody's from Tibnin, they used to have a problem. So this intrinsic racism that we have, not only do we apply it to ourselves and our families, but we apply it to other religions as well. The Prophet ﷺ was so giving, would look at you with the lens of compassion. You would shake his hand and you instantly become Muslim because you knew that was the truth. When's the last time somebody just said, I really look forward to seeing you. You make me feel so good. That's what happened to our latest, because we've done a few people who've reverted to Islam. Person came in and he had an environment of friends that didn't look at him through the lens of judgment because he was a non-Muslim coming to a majority Muslim program.
Yeah.
That's what did it. Not my lectures, not the meditations, nothing. It was that.
Can I tell you a story about that? Because subhanAllah, something very funny happened. And the person you're talking about, he's from Japan, correct? I was acquainted with him through Shoda.
Yes. He wants to change it to Muhammad.
Yes. I was acquainted with him months back, and it's through our work. He's in the same field that I'm in. So it was just an acquaintance. And then I met him again a few days ago. and I knew that he reverted. So I was so curious, and I'm like, what happened? And he told me about your lectures. He was like, it's Brother Hussein Charara. I used to go to these meditation lectures. I was listening to them, and they weren't about Islam, but at the end, some way, he kind of connected it back to Islam. And I went a couple of times, and then I started really soul searching and looking for the truth. And I found the truth, and I told him, that's so funny that you tell me that I'm meeting with Brother Hussein on Sunday. So what is it about this meditation that you connect it back to Islam that makes it so appealing for someone to look further into it?
Well, it was about 6 years ago when I met a father who had 2 weeks to live, and he prayed and he got healed. And the doctors kept him in the hospital for an extra month, saying, where did it go? So I asked God, show me how that works. Because when you read the Holy Quran, it's all about possibility. When we read stories of people sleeping for 300 years, or being thrown in fire and not being burned, or having miraculous birth, or being risen from the dead, I realized our biggest problem is we just don't believe it could happen to us.
We don't think that's tangible.
Well, we know it's tangible.
We know it as a story, but we can't imagine it through the laws of what we know.
Yes. And that's the irony. So when does that law apply to you is when you can't go to anybody else but God. That's the irony. So I said, why is people waiting? And it happens. The healings happens. They call them spontaneous remission, but there's a science. So I've studied the science for the past 6 years. One of the biggest mentors in the science from the West is a person named Joe Dispenza. But there's the people within the East, our scholars, the things that they're able to do, are living scholars. I'm just blown away from the information. But I said, okay, let's create a community that would be interested in that. So we've had, when you're in a meditative state, so meditation is for you just to become familiar with yourself. That's it. And the only way to do that is you have to be able to sit with yourself. See, our biggest addiction out there right now is thinking. When's the last time you were able to sit still and not think? What happens is we're so consumed through our senses. It's like, imagine watching a movie or this podcast. What makes the best movie is when your senses and your awareness is one with that movie.
Right.
You feel like you're there. So
Right.
when there's a crying scene, you cry. When you're a happy scene, you're happy. When there's other scenes, you feel those emotions. And then you realize, wait, none of that was real, but it felt really good. Well, something outside of me gave me those emotions. So now take that movie. As soon as you see a couple fighting, or you're on the subway and you see a state of lack, or somebody hurting, or somebody screaming, you're going to feel those emotions. You can't just observe it and separate.
Yeah.
People don't know how to do that anymore. So they become completely addicted to their emotions by some outside event. When my boyfriend calls me back, then I'll feel good. When my husband stops giving me the silent treatment, I'll feel good. My husband keeps yelling at me. So when I do marriage counseling, I teach people how to associate their awareness from that event. And they take their awareness back and be that pure consciousness and just observe.
Can you give me an example?
So imagine watching a movie, and then what you do is tune out, wiggle your toes, look at it as light, and say, this is just a movie. So now you're no longer one with that movie.
Yeah.
When, let's say you're married, let's say you and your wife are having a fight, and she's arguing with you or something. So you would tell your wife, well, you made me angry. Well, that's a lie. She didn't make you angry, because anger is within you.
Yeah.
So for instance, let's say your wife tells you something, why'd you do this? And she's angry. And then you reply with anger. You would tell her that was justified because you do that. But let's say you had a mentally ill kid. Let's say your wife slapped you. You say, well, the reason why I did this is because you slapped me. That's why I got angry. What if you had a child and he was mentally ill and he slapped you? What would you do?
It wouldn't make me angry.
Why? But he slapped you just like your wife.
Yeah, but he has a special condition.
What did you give him? Just that moment. This is
An
what we
excuse.
lost in humanity. We've stopped giving excuses Because we are addicted to these emotions outside of us. That's our addiction.
So you think we're looking for something to react to? That's
Yeah.
what you're saying.
Of course.
So you might say something right now in a certain context, and it might upset me because I'm actively looking for something to be upset about.
Thank you. But what could the excuse you could given your wife without, just like you did with your son if he was mentally ill?
There was a mosquito passing by.
No. How about your wife has gone through some childhood trauma from her father never feeling enough, and sometimes you remind her of that, and it traumatizes her to a point to react that way. And all she needs from you is love and compassion. She doesn't need to be reminded of her trauma of a childhood. Because whenever somebody gets angry over something foolish, all they're telling you is they're in pain. When you look at it that way, you notice now it's very hard for you to get angry. We never take that 2 seconds. All we do is we're very responsive. Why can't you just do that? Why can't you give your wife an excuse when she gets angry? That's how I say, I've never lost a marriage where at least one side, there was a sister who came in, I gave her a relationship test. How's communication? 1. Resolving conflicts out of a possible 10.
Yeah.
2, intimacy, closeness, 1. Overall satisfaction, 1, from him to her. And a few other metrics. And out of a possible, let's say 70, he would test a 4. So I'd look at her and I'd say, so you married a 4? She says, I did. I said, you know why? She said, why? Because I'm a 4. Because you're a 4. So I'm not a 4. That's your problem.
Oh, okay.
So I said, why don't you take 40 days and you become a 70 out of a 70 every day, irrespective of how he treats you. You get it?
Yeah.
We don't know how to do that. Somebody cuts us off, we have to beep. But what if that person was rushing to the hospital because their mom just died? Then you would feel bad for beeping.
You feel terrible.
The Prophet ﷺ didn't need something, a reason for him to give you compassion. You know why? Because he didn't have anger within him. Whenever you respond, it's because you're angry. When I squeeze you, what do I get? When you squeeze an orange, do you ever get pineapples?
No.
No, you only get orange. Don't ever expect anything else. So when your wife gets squeezed within, what she lets out has nothing to do with you. It usually has to do with some type of childhood trauma.
Does that work? The 40 days being...
It's never failed. I've never lost.
So it has happened.
So there's one brother, I would tell him recently, I said, and I always do this, but I said, I just had it a week ago or 2 weeks ago. And in every instant, the first couple of days where they wouldn't respond to their wife in a negative way, they wouldn't believe it. Just like an E student starts coming home and their parents are seeing them doing their homework. Their parents are asking them, what do you want? There must be a hidden agenda. See, to overcome that belief, because that's the belief that that person has on you, it takes 100 good transactions. So let's say your parents don't trust you. It's 100 good transactions of telling the truth. Let's say your wife doesn't think you're going to be like that. It's 100 good transactions. Every time you mess up, it starts over. You got to go back to 100.
Yeah.
So day 1, the husband will have to take her 11 roses, and she would count them. And he would say, you're my 12th rose. That's why there's only 11. Day 2, buy her a pair of tennis shoes. Say, your feet must be tired because you've been running through my mind all day. Those little things. You do that for 40 days. Every day, one nice thing without expecting anything in return. Why?
0 expectations.
0. Why? Because your expectation is only with Allah. So when you change, things outside of you change. What is the husband waiting? What is the wife waiting? When my husband changes, when my parents change, Allah says, no, you change. You take that step, your whole world will change. I'll change your whole environment.
Do you think that's why a lot of youth are struggling to find like the right person, and that's why divorce rates are like 50%?
Well, it's before divorce rates are like 50 to 60%. One, because they don't know how, because not only do you marry that individual, but you marry their fake self, their egoic self, their pain body self. And when that self comes out. That when you trigger because you left a water bottle on the table and it left a mark, and you see another creature yelling at you, like, who is this? You don't realize it's just some type of emotional outburst because of something that happened in her past from her childhood, usually because it's the program she was given by her parents.
Yeah.
So if you're not trained as a husband how to deal with that, then your pain is going to come out. And now your both pains is
Clashing
coming,
of the pains.
clashing with anger.
Yeah.
And thus the reason for divorce rate. That's why I always tell scholars that don't marry anybody without marriage counseling, premarital counseling. 20 questions. 1, I'll figure out if you two are compatible. 2, if you're not compatible, I'm going to tell you what you're going to have to do in order to save this marriage.
You can do that.
I do that.
Okay. I mean, and it works. You had couples that left after that premarital. It didn't work. Doesn't work out.
Either you say, we're not compatible. Oh my God. You know, my husband eventually wants me to wear the headscarf, or I have no interest. I wear tight clothes. I'm not going to change. Right? Because what happens is sometimes we get in relationships and we don't realize, well, what our future will look like.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why we're in that relationship sometimes is because our parents don't want it. And his parents don't want it. And now you guys have a common enemy. And you, instead of looking at each other, you look at the common enemy.
Yeah.
And then when the common enemy goes away, boom. That's why never keep a secret from your parents, ever. No matter how painful it is. Look at Crestwood, Dearborn High, Fortson. Many of those students have relationships. So I always ask them, how many of them do their parents know? They'll say very few. I say, who loves them the most? That boy that you're dating. It says, his mom. So, but he's going behind his mom's back to speak to you. True. So what if you marry such a guy? If he's willing to go behind his mom's back, what do you think he'll do to you one day? What don't we do? Our low desires control us. We stop anticipating problems. We smoke marijuana, we do drugs, we hang out with friends that speak indecently. And we never ask the question, will our future self be happy with this?
Right.
And then we deal with the traumatic effects later.
What did your Khalto Yusra do to keep 50 plus years in a marriage?
Oh. Well, my uncle, Hajj Muhammad Turfa, my life, one of the most, because he was like my father growing up. He took me to, I was probably 7, 8 years old. He says, come on, you're going to pump gas in the gas can and we're going to cut the grass together. I said, okay. So I went there. I took the gas can out. I took the nozzle out. I went and paid $1, came back out, started filling it up. And what happened is it overflowed. And the gas went all over his suit and his shoes. I'm thinking my mom is going to kill me. We get to his house, and who's outside, because we were living with him at the time, is my mom. So he looks at it and says, you want to know what your son did? I'm like, oh no, I'm going to get the biggest beating. He went in the gas station, he took his own dollar, paid for the gas, came, filled it up himself, closed it and put it in the car. I'm so impressed by your son. He never mentioned that I had gas all over his pants. How many people do you know when something bad happens to them, they don't even think about it? What do most of us do? We talk to 10 people about what just happened to me.
Of course.
And we thrive off that negativity. And that becomes our belief system. That had much more impact than most things in my life. I said, wow, if he could do that, I'd love to be a person like that. And that was the Prophet of Islam. That's why when people would throw garbage at him, and if that day they didn't show up to throw garbage on him, he'd go check on them, making sure they're not sick.
Yeah.
Because he didn't have anger. And see, if somebody stole $10,000 from you, Jafar, would you suffer?
Yeah. It would be hard.
But in Islam, it depends. If that $10,000 is yours, you really thought you're the one that got it, then you would suffer.
Right.
And Islam says Allah is the one that gave you the $10,000.
And he
Allah,
took it.
He took it. Do you go get your right? Do you call the police? Yes. But do you suffer? No. Pain is not a choice. Suffering is.
Okay.
Suffering is when you put the attention on yourself.
That's the distinction.
That's
Okay.
and most of it just takes one bad event to happen, and then it kills our dreams. This didn't work out this way. That's why there's a guy, he's now going to feed 1 billion people. They had no food on Thanksgiving. Somebody opened the door, a stranger knocked on the door and gave him a turkey dinner. And their father didn't want to accept charity. So they got into a fight, but eventually accepted it.
Yeah.
And the guy says, don't let your ego not feeding your kids. Eventually his father left after 4 days. But then he realized strangers care. That was the message that he got. And because of that, he took his worst day and he made it his best day.
Yeah.
And that's what life's about. When you have a setback. So we just did this last Wednesday. People had to come up on stage. And they had to see, how do you speak about themselves? So you had to speak in a way as if it already happened. So the guy says, yes, this was true. I just lost my job from Ford. I got reassigned to a job that I hated, and I can't stand it, and I'm so upset. That was his mindset coming in. And he came with his parents, and his parents were praying for them because he was in so much depression. So I told him, okay, come on stage and speak about it as if it's already been healed. I got this job. I'm kind of happy with it now, but I'm still so upset that I lost my old job. But I know things are going to happen in a good way, but it's so hard. So I asked the audience, how many of you guys believe him? Nobody raised their hand.
Yeah.
So he took, and it's on YouTube, he took about 3 or 4 tries. And on the 4th try, he finally figured it out. See, when you have a dream and you wake up, the body thought it was real. That's why you feel scared or get happy. A nightmare, you get scared. A good dream, you feel happy. See, the body doesn't know the difference. However you talk to yourself and imagine things, your body thinks it's going to real. So if you tell yourself it's too hard, I'm never going to get married, I'm too old, this cancer is going to kill me, your body's listening.
It's going to react.
It's going to react and think it's the truth. And that's what I've been studying. So there's a thing called epigenetics in the science. That's a whole different discussion. So when we teach people, like that's what meditation is. We become so familiar with yourself, the self that you want to love, and you sit there and you don't move until your brain is calm and your heart is full. And it's at that moment that something miraculous happens. And now we have had probably over 100 testimonials. I've always kept them private. We've shared one public testimonial. There was a lady who was basically couldn't walk, couldn't talk. She had a severe immune issues in her system. And I looked at her and said, why don't we just, instead of doing our meditation tonight, we do a healing? So about 9 people would circle around her. Nobody would know her issues. And now what's really interesting, at the end of the meditation and end of the prayer, the dua, usually it's dua kumel or dua mashlul we do, people would share the same vision that they had for the lady. So now we're getting shared visions. How does that work?
Yeah.
And then she wouldn't say anybody about her pain. Everybody would feel her pain.
So she's just in the middle.
She's in the middle.
No one knows what's going on
No
with
one
her.
will go, it's on. We're just there because we don't heal people. That's Allah. All we're doing is sending love. You know, in Palestine, they say pray for Palestine. Get a group of people to really focus on Palestine with a clear intention and elevated emotion of peace. And it has an effect. They've done it. In Lebanon in the 80s, there was civil war. They get 1,000 monks together to pray for people in Lebanon. On those days, there'd be a 70% decrease in war crimes, traffic, health issues. They've done studies. So that's the power of prayer because we're all connected. What's really interesting is not only do people share the same exact vision, sometimes people would go into other people's dreams and they would vision their meditations. How does that work? And that's just points everything at possibility. So what it means is that prayer, the true sense of prayer, is where your heart is so open that you're no longer looking in the future through the lens of the past. You're creating a new future.
That is the key. Like that's the thing that's opening the door for you, basically.
Correct. So you say, okay, God says, well, follow my rules. That's why Sharia is step 1. We think Sharia is the last step. Praying, dressing modestly, lowering your gaze, give charity. That's the first step. What happens is when you bypass this step and you try to do other things that are good, actually it could have reverse effects.
Yeah.
Because those things will start making you feel like that's God. And you'll start worshiping those things. That's why when those things are taken away, you fall into a state of despair. But if you do it God's way, if wise goes, if anything goes, if my family, God forbid, goes, it's all returning to God.
Yeah.
It's not mine. just like that $10,000.
Right.
That's why the Prophet ﷺ, when somebody would take something from them, he'd see in their heart that they were in so much pain, and he would see the fire within their heart when they did the sin. He'd go pray for them. So imagine your wife irritates you, and she's really annoyed, and you say, you know what, I'm going to go pray for you, and you give her a hug. And you do that every time. What would happen to your marriage?
Skyrocket.
What will happen to your kids?
It would be fantastic for them.
But that means who has to change for that to happen?
You have to change.
Not your
Even
wife.
if
Yeah. So what's one of the things I do? Like I said, I deal with prostitutes in the community. What's the one thing I teach people? I'm not here to change you. I can't. The Prophet ﷺ couldn't change people. Who the hell do you think you are? But what you need to do is accept people for who they are at that point and give them the space to change.
Do you think that's why your Khaltu Yusra did to maintain her marriage for 50 years?
Absolutely. She accepted her husband for who he is, the good and the bad, and she loved both sides. And her patience in the bad times and her patience in the good times. Her mood wasn't elevated when somebody else was good to her or bad to her. She was always even keel. And that's the best gift you could give somebody.
A lot of the things you're saying, it's detaching your emotions from what's happening around us.
Correct.
That's what it is.
Yeah. Otherwise, you're a slave to that thing. Now, when you want to attach something to an emotion, it's your choice. When I want to watch a movie and become one with that movie, you chose to. That's how you have to take your free will. Right now, it's the body completely taking over the mind.
Is that the biggest issue you see we're facing?
Biggest. Now it's, even if I deal with kids who think they're homosexual. Well, what happened? Well, they had a feeling, and they thought that feeling is who they are. I said, well, how long have you felt this way? Because some people say from birth. So I just started feeling this way. So let's think about that. Because you're going to have a lot of feelings and a lot of thoughts. You're going to have thoughts of maybe looking at other women or doing drugs, or feelings to do haram. Does that mean it's who you are? And we've become one with that. We have to now learn to observe our feelings. It's like an obese guy. He opens up the fridge. He sees cupcakes. What does his feelings tell him?
Grab the cupcake.
But there's a higher self, the observer of your feeling, which is your consciousness. So your mind doesn't move. Your consciousness does. Unfortunately, wherever our feelings tell our consciousness go to that part of the mind, that's who we are. Our body has a feeling of hunger. Mind says, eat it. Consciousness goes to that part of the mind. He eats the cupcake. Or you open up the fridge. He sees cupcake. Body says, cupcake. But then consciousness, before the mind takes over, says, cupcake? I just ate 42 cupcakes 2 hours ago. I'm not married. I'm overweight. I have diabetes. I have no friends. Actually, I'm going to take my consciousness to a different part of my mind of how it's going to feel when I start losing weight. I'm going to put the cupcake back. You do that enough time, he loses weight, he gets his life back, everything. That's all it is.
There's something that I listened to, and it was, pretend that there's a documentary crew following you around, documenting, filming you for a documentary that's going to come out about your future success, about what you're, where you want to be, and they're filming you doing all the right things. So when you think about it like that there's like,
but here's the problem with that. That's consciousness. See, people go to, like, let's say Ashura lectures, Muharram lectures, or Ramadan lectures. They hear something spiritual. That's consciousness. Consciousness works at 40 megabytes per second. Okay? You consciously have to think about picking up that speaker, the water bottle, the iPad, typing, consciously, making a left turn. The subconscious, the body, works at 40 million bits per second. The way you're putting your finger on your mouth, the way you're sitting, the way you put your watch on, the way you brush your teeth, the way you comb your hair, the way you speak back to your wife. These are all things that I've learned. Where did you learn these things from? Most of them. Do you remember when you learned to tie your shoes?
no,
How do you know it's the right way?
it's a way that I know of.
Yeah, but how do you know it's the best way?
I don't know if it's the best
So
way.
let's say there was a better way for you to tie your shoes. What would you have to do to learn that new way?
I would have to I mean, it's going to be hard to do it.
Correct. So you'd have to stop and think about
Every time I put on my shoes.
think about the way you're thinking about tying your shoes and pause and reprogram yourself. Let's say tying your shoes was the bad way. That's because you were given a bad program that you don't even remember as a child. Most of us are given bad programs. How do you know what the bad program is? What's hard in your life? Is me being close to my wife hard? Wealth, money, do I look as abundance as a state of very hard? If I look at money as the root of all evil, do I look at not trusting? Why do I think these way? Why do I have these beliefs? Well, just like tying your shoes, that was the program you were given.
Yeah.
Those are all the habits. That works at 40 million bits per second. So I could say consciously, I want to be as positive as I want. That's why positive thinking doesn't change anybody. But if the subconscious, the program says, no, you're a loser. Why? Because you were told for 8 years you're a loser. That's the program. And if you can't think greater than the way you feel, then the program takes over.
Yeah.
So what does meditation do? It shuts off the program. That's why the Maharajas say hypnosis is okay. It shuts off the body. You're no longer your analytical self. You're just the conscious self, and you're going to reprogram the body. That's why people with really bad health issues, I've had doctors call me and say, what did you do? Her thyroid level went down. She had twins. What happened? I said, well, we upregulated her genes. Well, how? Well, we reprogrammed her. How'd you do that? Well, through prayer. Shut off the body, and we became her true conscious self. People, stories all the time. Christians have it when they feel a mystical moment. Muslims have it when they go to, let's say, the shrine of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. But I believe it could happen right here. But the way you do that is you have to really ask yourself, you go at night and say, where do I keep falling from grace? What are things in my life that are really hard? It's like I dealt with a guy who's got a really bad porn addiction. I deal with that a lot too. And I realized that he wasn't addicted to porn.
What was he addicted to?
What happened? What's a feeling that a lot of people feel after they watch porn and feel good after?
It's a high, like any other.
What is followed by the high? There's an emotion. By the way, prayer too. But
yeah, you feel very high and then you feel very low.
Yeah, low. It's a feeling of guilt. Well, why is somebody always feeling guilty? Why not say, okay, I did something wrong, but it made me feel good. It was worth it.
Yeah.
Well, why is there an emotion of guilt with this individual? I said, how did your parents make you feel every time you did something bad? Oh, and they made me feel worse. I said, that's your program. You're looking now, since your parents are not here, for you to feel alive. You're addicted to the emotion of guilt.
So he was addicted to guilt, not the actual porn.
Not the porn. It was the guilt. So now we had to teach him how to self-soothe. It's like the guy, see, we don't realize, like I had a guy quit smoking after 20 years. Well, how? I said, you want to soothe yourself through the cigarette and remove that feeling. That's the addiction. When the feeling comes and you want a cigarette, it's the worst feeling in the world. But I said, what happens after you do that for 2 hours, that feeling, if you don't smoke a cigarette? Why don't you try it for a week? Within 2 weeks, that feeling went from 2 hours to 2 minutes. And now it's much more easy to manage. But he never gave himself a chance. You don't need nicotine patches. You just have to be willing to sit with yourself. That's why at night, how did I go? Where did I fall from grace? And in the morning, what's the best version of myself? And you just take 1%. And God has a system. When you call on me, I answer you. That's you calling on God. Why when you wake up? Because that's when you're really conscious. Your brain is in alpha waves. You're very suggestible. So now you self-speak to yourself. This is who I'm going to be. And then you do your prayers, you do whatever. Then you go out in the world and you start seeing, okay, how conscious am I going to be through each transaction? Where am I going to lose unconsciousness? That's why a lot of people, if you put your keys down, 2 minutes later, where did I put my keys? Because you weren't aware of yourself when you put your keys down. Your mind was elsewhere. Most people live their lives that way. That's the iPhone generation. That's why suicide rates are so high, because people can't live with themselves anymore because they become so unconscious and nothing makes them happy. And they needed something outside of them to make them happy. And when that thing goes away, they can't live with themselves, suicide. Okay. Same with so many other things. There was another story I was going to share. There was a lady who had really bad anxiety,
Yeah.
and we carried her into the prayer hall, and we elevated her heart, calmed her mind through prayer, through heart meditations, and so on. And people shared a lot of mystical visions, but she had to be carried. At the end of the meditation, she ran around the prayer hall around 30 times.
Wow.
And everything would be through thoughts because of stress. She would start talking bad about her son because her son was lost in sin. That caused her anxiety. Eventually, she needed meds. And if she doesn't take her meds, she would die, basically. Her meds melted. She hasn't taken a med since. Well, how did that happen? It's your belief systems. Whatever you keep recurring thought that you have, that's your belief. So let's go one step deeper. What is an emotion? Because majority of people don't pray 5 times a day, especially youth, even though it's a commandment of God. That's how you become Muslim by choice. If somebody says, why do you pray? Say, God commanded me. Why do you wear hijab? God commanded me. Why do you promote good, forbid evil? God commanded me. God knows me better than I know myself. But let's look at prayer. This is why I've taken such a focus on meditation, to teach people how to become familiar with themselves to the point that they love themselves, where they actually look forward to prayer. What's an emotion that many people feel after they pray?
They feel they feel like they did a good thing.
Okay.
Like
They do feel like they did a good thing, but what's one of the top emotions when I've been interviewing people?
satisfaction with oneself.
Well, there is a satisfaction, but it's actually a different word. I'm going to give it to you and tell me if you resonate. Relief.
Yes.
Most people you ask say, I'm relieved that I got to finish my prayers. I want you to go to your wife and say, man, I'm so relieved that I got to take care of you and finish this task and help you with laundry. I'm so relieved that I finished helping you cooking dinner. I'm so relieved that I finished, giving you this money so I don't have to worry about it anymore. So relieved that I, finished picking you up from work.
When you say it like that, it has a very negative connotation to it.
That's what relief is. When you're doing something good, but then it's followed up through relief that I don't have to do it anymore, it's very negative. Why is that the case from our discussion? Because that was the program they were given. Pray, otherwise you're going to go to hell. Well, I don't want to go
Praying,
get it over so I don't have to go to hell, and so God doesn't curse me. So there's a sense of relief. Are you telling me that's what Imam Hussein alayhi salam sacrificed his family for you to feel relieved of prayer? Where he's in the middle of battlefield, he was excited to go and pray, even though there's 70,000 or however many out on the other side. When's the last time we've had that type of prayer where we got up excited? Well, how can you if that was your program? That's why the scholar says, let's say if you're very emotional and it's time to pray, you don't pray. That prayer has very little value. You wait till the emotion goes. So now why is meditation so important? That's the best medicine, because we're so addicted to thinking and we're always waiting to do the next thing. We're anticipation machines, our brains. Think of the Instagram. Every 3 seconds you're scrolling.
Attention span.
The attention span is so low, and we become dumber as a society, and we could talk about that. So I teach people right before you pray, how about you give yourself 10 minutes and you don't move until you overcome yourself.
What does that mean though?
So you're sitting, you're thinking about your kids, you're thinking about your job, and you say, you know what? All these things, because if I were to ask you a question, if you could control an outcome, should you worry about it?
If I can control an outcome, yeah, I should worry about it if I'm in control.
Wait, it's absurd. If you could control an outcome, why would you worry about it?
Yeah.
If you could control an outcome, should you worry about it?
No.
And if you can't control an outcome, should you worry about it?
But the thing is, if it's out of my control, if I
What's worry going to
don't
do
worry.
for you if you can't? What's worry going to do for you if you have no control?
Yeah, it's not going to do anything.
So if you can't control an outcome, should you worry about it?
No.
There's a hurricane that's going to hit eventually that you have no control over. Should you worry about it?
Yeah.
You have no control. How would you worry about it? You don't even know where it's going to hit.
It's not going to hit here, you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It could happen anywhere.
Oh,
You have no control.
no.
Zero. Right? And if
Yeah.
you can control an outcome, let's say a hurricane is coming and you know it's coming, well, you got to get prepared. But will worrying help you at all?
No.
That's the state you want to get in, where you realize it's a law that's in complete control. What am I worried about? So if something doesn't go my way, that setback is a setup for something bigger. Oh, that guy told me he doesn't want to love me anymore. Good. Now what? Well, you're going to upgrade. Well, why? Because imagine if you stayed with that guy, you got married, and he told you with 2 kids. And that's what I do. So like I was recently, I signed up for Lifetime Fitness. And I think I don't publicize what I do, but I think I do a lot of counseling for this reason. I sat with the guy came and greeted me, and the way he shook my hand, I felt pain and I felt fake. So I'm sitting with him, and usually I never, like in my counseling sessions, they've already given me the okay to share with them, my opinion. Every once in a while, like I was with my wife at a restaurant, and there was a girl, and I told my wife, man, that lady's in pain. My wife's like, don't say anything. Not everywhere we go. So I come back, I said, look, my background's in behavioral science. Are you in pain? Did you just go through a breakup? Man, she started to cry. And I said, you know why you went through this breakup? I said, why? I said, was the guy harsh to you? She said, yeah. I said, because you didn't tell your dad. I said, how did you know he didn't tell your dad? Because no man will abuse you if they know there's another man next to you. So my advice to you is go tell your dad everything and realize that you attracted somebody that wanted to go behind your dad's back, who loves you the most. We see her a month later, went to the restaurant, she wanted to like hug me. I said, I didn't realize, why would I do this? What kind of person did I become that I went behind my dad's back? There was a lady came in, somebody referred her, and she didn't know what she was walking into. It was like more of an Islamic, so she wasn't dressed the most appropriate ways. And she says, yeah, my life's not going where I want to do this. And I said, are you in a relationship? She said, yeah, but don't tell me to leave. I'm like everybody else. So
She already knew the answer before she walked in.
So I was like, but I don't know what you're talking about. Why would I tell you? I don't even know about him. I said, but can I give you a quick relationship test? So I gave the same relationship test. And again, he tested a 3. I said, do you know why he's a 3? Because you're a 3. And how is your relationship with your dad? She says, it's really bad. I said, do you notice a pattern? But every time you look at him, I want you to look at him as a 3. And stop looking at him like he's perfect, even though he abuses you, uses you, and guilts you. And only when he needs something, he acts nice to you. Month goes by, I did a follow-up. She came dressed much decently. She said, yeah, I got rid of that loser. So I didn't realize every time I looked at him, you were right. And the only reason I did it is because my dad didn't want it, and it was my revenge towards my dad. Then I started thinking, why am I mad at my dad? He gives me everything. Why? And I realized it was because of my friends and some type of weird belief system that I had. I ended up setting her up with a real estate agent, and then things just weird. And I think that's what life's about.
You're tying everything back to a lot of things back to the parents.
Most of the things that are hard in our lives, it's usually bad parenting or our relationship with our current parents, that we're not grateful for them being good parents. If you read a book, Myth of Normal by Dr. Gabriel May, he hits this on the head. And I realized that's why you only look at people. If your wife is going through a tough time, let's say if she's going a tough time through her weight or whatever, it's something that happened usually through her childhood or some type of traumatic event. And all she needs is your love and compassion and understand. A lot of times she doesn't need advice. She already tells you. Consciously, she'll tell you what's right. But it's the body, that program that was given, that needs to reprogram it. And there's only 2 ways. Somebody listening to this podcast will never change. There's only 2 ways to change. Either you've listened to it and you said, I'm going to start this habit. I don't pray, I'm going to start. I'm not nice to my mom every day. I talk back. I'm going to stop doing that. I'm not, compassionate towards my husband when he's mean to me. I'm going to fill up his cup regardless how he treats me. That's the habit.
Yeah.
There's either that or hypnosis, where you reprogram the body to thinking other things. Those are the only two ways. It's not through talking. No one's ever changed through positive motivational talking.
Is that why you say you don't believe in motivational speaking? You believe in giving people tools?
Correct. There's no such thing. If motivational speaking could change people, then why did the Prophet get betrayed as soon as he died? Who is a better motivational speaker than the Prophet?
No one.
But people whose hearts were open change. Look at the Holy Quran. When Pharaoh, because this is now, I've gone through the healings, my focus, and we've gotten good at that outside of the schools that we run and giving people safer environments. Now, for me, the real focus, and I'm just blown away, is the Holy Quran and what it's given to me, the gift. It's the greatest miracle that we have. So I've been studying the relationship between Prophet Musa alayhi salam and Pharaoh. It was one of the most mentioned names. What's interesting about that is the Prophet was commanded by God. And Prophet Musa, even in the Quran, resisted a little bit. So this guy is a tyrant. God commanded him to go to Pharaoh, speak to him. And Allah commanded him to go with a soft tongue. So now wait.
Speak nicely.
Speak nicely. So usually you would only speak nicely to somebody if you have the upper hand. It's a principle. It's a principle in the Quran. It's a principle. If I'm harsh to you, and you're my boss, and I stole from you, and I was mean to you, well, guess what? You're gonna be tough with me.
Of course.
But if you're nice to me, that means because you have the upper hand and you're trying to change me. Correct?
Yes.
But let's say you robbed me. You're the boss, right?
Yeah.
And you didn't pay my paycheck, but I still came nice to you.
I'm going to feel terrible.
But I was nice to you, said, it's okay. Why did you rob me? I said, no, I don't have the upper hand. That's not going to change you. You have the upper hand.
Yeah.
If I already robbed you and I'm nice to you, I'm just going to take advantage of you even more and kick you out.
Right.
That's not the case. The case is be tough. Call the police. My boss, he did this, that, and the other. Right?
Right.
But in the Quran, it's the opposite. And God sent 2 prophets to Pharaoh. Why? Because God says, I see something in him that you don't see. And the proof is in the Holy Quran where he gets drowned. And then he says, God, I only believe in you. That's proof that there was a glimmer of hope within Pharaoh. That he even asked for forgiveness. Wow, here's somebody who killed babies, who tormented people, who hurt people. But Allah says, I see something that you don't. So if Allah is commanding the prophets of God, and he sent 2 prophets to go help, and he sent miracles to help Pharaoh, then what excuse do you have when somebody comes and hurts you that you don't show compassion towards them? We can't even forgive somebody who cuts us off in the street. That's why in Islam, you notice there's a lot of people on the corners asking for money.
Right.
Even then, you don't deny them. Give them a quarter, give them food, or just give them a wave. Never not look at them. But unfortunately, we've been programmed to thinking everybody's a threat. So now imagine a lion is chasing you. Where's your attention? Worst case, it's going to eat me. I'm going to run away. The thing's evil. Replace that lion. Like when I asked that woman, what's wrong? My ex-husband, what happened? He cheated on me. How long? 10 years. So now, out of the infinite amount of possibilities, every new relationship, she's looking at it as the worst. Now everybody's a cheater. That's her trauma. How do you reprogram that? Body, no, you're wrong. This is how you're going to feel. This is how my future relationship's going to be. Yes, I'm broke now, but this is how my abundance is going to be. You're going to reprogram the body. You take your free will back. Most people don't do that. They think they are the body. So I spend a lot of time teaching people how to reprogram themselves. And the only way to do that is through prayer. By asking Allah. There's no other way.
Is there do you teach them to do it in a specific way, or just sit truthfully?
Let's look at hijab.
Okay.
We had a sister, and because of this experience, 4 other sisters put on hijab. I'm teaching people how to disidentify with the body. Because when you die, you're not this body. And you shut the body off, but you're awake. Just like in a dream. You're in a different dimension. So when you get into this dimension while you're awake, where you're praying and you close your eyes and you're hearing the words of God, or you're doing a guided meditation, and you become no one, no body, in no time, you go into a different dimension. What happens to people's dreams all the time? That's why the imam could come to the dream, or a prophet could come to your dream, or a dead person could come to your dream. That's them.
Yeah.
They're in a different dimension. Well, you could also do that while you're awake. So in this one's case, she asked God in the morning, show me a sign. And this girl used to wear crop tops, not the best dress. Well, in the meditation, she had a holy figure put the hijab on her head. And she felt so amazing that the next week she came on stage and gave a testimonial with the hijab on and told the people why. That she had this moment that was more real or more gratifying than any attention that some guy gave her. And why was she dressed that way? Because her father never gave her the attention that she needed. So
Back
now
to the
she's
parents.
seeking.
Yeah.
But now she replaced that feeling with something greater that was more elevated, that was more godly. That replacement teaches her I can never go back to my old self, because that was way more greater than that.
Yeah.
There was a guy who wanted to commit suicide. And I said, okay, why do you want to commit suicide? Well, COVID hit, I lost my job. I said, well, where do you want to work? He says, I want to work for the state, because that's where my friends in California worked, and I want to serve people.
Are you this calm talking to them?
Yeah, I've probably yelled. One of my worst times in my life is the 2 times I've yelled at my kids.
I'm just thinking about someone walking in like emotional, wanting to commit suicide, and then you ask him this very simple question like, where do you want to work?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I've even gone into hospitals where people have gone through breakups and they're on suicide watch and a police officer is there. And then I'll come in. And all they're doing is they just forget about their higher selves. They so completely attached to the body. And when the body can no longer be fulfilled, that pain, they rather disassociate and kill themselves. Because that pain. And unless you go through that heartbreak, unless you go through that traumatic experience where your job is gone or you can't take care of your family, it's very hard for you to sympathize and empathize.
What happened to that gentleman?
So he came in and I said, well, what do you want to do? He said, I don't want to live anymore. I'm overweight. I'm here. I'm Iraqi. The Lebanese are not really too nice to me. Everybody thinks I'm a little bit weird. I don't want to live anymore. I'm a disappointment to my family. I lost my job. COVID hit. I said, no problem. I said, how about we reprogram yourself? Well, how? I said, how about you wake up in the morning, and instead of using your brain as a record of the past, and most people do it, right when they wake up, they check their phone, they look at their kids, and then all the same emotions as the yesterday happened. So their yesterday becomes their tomorrow, and no change. That's why if you ask people, when's the last time you've done something for the first time, they can't answer. That's why most people over the age of 40, they don't smile.
Is that...
Look at it. Just start looking, observing people. Most people over the age of 40, if you start observing, they don't smile. Why? Imagine me and you watch the same movie 1,000 times in a row.
Yeah.
Will you smile after the 1,000th time?
No.
Most people's lives are like that. They wake up and do the same things. You become miserable.
Yeah.
So God says, no. Constantly, the prophet said, until you die, learn new things. And the only way to do that, that's why I resonate people with like Haji Najat Bazi. She was a nurse. Her husband was well-to-do. She had a normal life, saving people's lives. But she went into a house. She noticed that this kid was in a laundry basket as her crib, and the family had no money. She says, how am I going to sleep at night when there's families like this? So she changed her whole purpose in life.
Right.
One incident. Now she has a life of purpose. Before, she was living the program. The program told her, be a nurse, take 2 vacations a year, help people every once in a while. You get it?
Yeah.
That's why the most important thing that you could tell yourself is, when I die, how did I give back? I'm a doctor. Why? For the sake of Allah. I became a teacher for the sake of Allah. And Allah showed me new opportunities to give back. That's what I'm going to spend the rest of my life doing. In the first couple hours of my day, I create, I meditate, I pray, I recite Quran, whatever. Then the rest of the day, I serve. And then at night, how did I do? It's not difficult. But there has to be a moment where you pause about your life and say, what is it? Like, just close your, right before you go to sleep, close your eyes and say, what is something that I know I should not be doing?
You can probably find the answer really quick too.
Everybody has a list. What I did yesterday, we have Saturday school. So I told the kid challenged me. I said, come on up. I called his mom in front of all the kids. They're so mean. I said, okay, you have one more thing to tell your son to do. You're not going to remind him.
Yeah.
Because we have a lot of bad parenting going on. They keep reminding them to pray. They keep reminding them to do homework. They keep reminding them to clean their room. They don't. I said, stop reminding. It's not working. You have to keep reminding them. It means it's not working. What's one thing you're going to have to do for 2 weeks that your mom's not going to remind you? And the parents would always say, prayer, do their homework, be nice to their siblings. I said, and I would give them examples of people who would see it opportunities they didn't have to be reminded. You see a garbage can that's full, you walk away, you see it's full, your parents tell you to take it out, you see it's full, you do it on your own. That's what makes you in the top 5% of the world.
Right.
That's it. And you practicing it every day. You want to become top 5% in anything, you just have to practice it more than other people. That's what makes it an obsession. So then you go 2 weeks, and my mom says, I don't know what you did, but what did I do? I just gave him a vision of the future. He knew if he was going to do his video games before his homework, his future self wasn't going to be happy. I had one kid come to me and tell me, I did exactly what you said. I went to Dearborn High, I saw my friends, and I got scared because I didn't want my kids to be like that. So I went and found, like you told me, the nice kids, the smart kids. I became their friends. Show me who your friends are, show you are. So this guy had a bad program who wanted to commit suicide. He thought if he couldn't live a certain life and fulfill his parents' expectations, he's a disappointment. I said, how about instead of asking people what you want and what you should be, how about you ask God? Well, how do I do that? How about you wake up in the morning and pray? Well, most people, they wake up in the morning. If I tell you you want things to happen on time, pray in the morning. There's a brother, his name is one of the top counselors now in our community, Shadi Rustam. When he was a kid, I told him, just pray on time. Nothing will ever go wrong. And he says, that's what's made my whole life change, is me praying on time. So I told him, and by the way, Jaffer, do you know why most people don't wake up and pray?
Why?
If I gave you $1 million to wake up in the morning every day,
Of course.
would you wake up in the morning?
Absolutely.
How about if I tell you I'll give you $1 billion to kill yourself, would you kill yourself?
No.
So is your life priceless?
Yeah.
And you would wake up for $1 million every day. If I told you $1 million every day, you'd wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning.
Of course.
Probably wouldn't even go to sleep, right?
Yeah.
But if God has given you life which is priceless, and he's telling you to wake up in the morning every day, and he's given you more than $1 million, why aren't you waking up?
Yeah.
You know why?
It's the perspective is not there, man.
Well, more than that. You just don't believe in it.
Yeah.
That's where we have to be honest.
We're so addicted to the tangible, too.
Well, we just don't believe in it. It's the 4-minute mile, right? Nobody believed that somebody could run it. But as soon as one person did. So what I train people is, all right, stop going to the highest levels of heaven. How about you just try to change one thing in your life and see how Allah responds to you? And that's what I do. I think that's why the work that we do is so effective. It's non-judgmental. And I always tell, like this guy that I actually did a YouTube video with him. He was a 20-year drug addict. And I said, when you close your eyes, where would it wander? Because that's where your heart is. He said, robbing people to do drugs. Well, since then, his life changed. He got his family back. And on his birthday, his wife bought him a Holy Quran. And these were non-Muslims. He said, whatever you're doing is working. I'm buying you this gift. And I said, now when do you close your eyes, where does your heart wander? Where does your mind wander for your heart? He says, on IT, computer programming, and getting closer to God. I said, what shifted? He said he no longer wanted to be a victim. He always chose himself to be a victim of why he did these things. And we're really good. Why are you doing this? I got raped. I'm a victim. I got molested. Teaching people how to even forgive their rapists and molesters. They look at me like it's... I said, no, you're not allowing them to get away with the act, but energetically, you're not going to be holding on to that baggage.
Right.
So this guy was holding on to some baggage. I said, what do you want to do? He said, I want to work for the state. I said, can you wake up in the morning and pray and act as if you're already working for the state? Because now you have to program the body who it needs to be. You don't need the job to feel abundant and successful. You are already it. Just like searching for truth or searching for your watch. You already have it. We don't believe in that. So how do you reprogram that? You just need one experience. That's why the Holy Quran is filled with experiences for you.
Yeah.
So when you read about Fir'aun, are you like Fir'aun? When you read about Yusuf, are you like Yusuf? When you read about people of the cave sleeping for 300 years, is that possibility for you? So then he calls me up. He says, okay, I'll do it. I says, I'm not sharing you my beliefs, but I'm telling you 100% it's going to work. And people are always like, why am I so confident? Because God is telling me. I'm not telling you mine. I never point anybody at myself. I always point them at the prophets, the imams, and our top scholars. I'll give them resources. I'll go to almizan.org. If you want to understand the Quran, I give them other resources. But if they ever point at me, ever, you know I'm a liar. And a lot of people, like religious institutions and organizations, it's about the organization, not the religion.
Right.
So then he goes, I said, ask God to show you a sign. He says, okay. So he calls me, he says, all I see is Cadillac. So what do you mean? He says, I pray, I do my prayers, I envision myself working for the state, but then sometimes I'll doze off, I see Cadillac. I go out on the street, I see Cadillacs. Remember, it's COVID. Nobody's on the road. All he's seeing is Cadillac. Week goes by, he says, I'm staying upregulated. I'm not going to lack, but my unemployment didn't go through. So it's all setbacks or setups for something bigger. People don't realize, like someone said, I lost my job. But what if you would have kept your job and you got hit by a yellow bus? Right?
Yeah.
Since you don't know, that's why you always be optimistic when something doesn't go your way.
You always have to say, God did this for a reason.
Always. Right? But you decide what the reason is. Most of us...
Do you think we have to know what the reason is?
No, you have to decide what the reason is.
Yeah.
If God did something for you and you say, God doesn't like me, God is cursed on me.
Absolutely.
That's what most people's
Yeah.
reasons on. God's like, and the angels are like, what? It's like when, people say, I'm so stupid, it's so hard. I said, what if you talk to your son that way? Or your son talks to himself that way?
Yeah.
I'm so stupid, it's so hard, nothing's going to work. What would you tell your son? Don't speak that way. So, well, how about you speak to yourself? I said, that's God's creation, and you're speaking to God's creation that way. Right?
Yeah.
That's why one of the most important things is the ants, the automatic negative thoughts that we have. 70,000 thoughts, most of them are negatives, most of them are the same thoughts as yesterday. He calls unemployment. The lady likes him. He waits 4 hours on the phone, gives him $6,000, frees up his money. She says, I like you. I've never done this, but I want to give you a job working for the state. He says, really? He says, yeah. How things happen, Jafar, it's not for you to decide.
Yeah.
That's Allah. Promote good, do the wajib acts, avoid the haram. If you're a teacher, just be a teacher. If you're a student, be a student. If you're a husband, just do the simple things. It's not for you to get into deep esoteric levels. Those will come after through events and
You just have to believe that they will.
Just like if you understand the placebo, you will understand there's a guy who was an E student. He took his ACT off a whim. He got almost like a perfect score. So then he thought he was a genius. He ended up in one of the top schools. Then later he found out that he gave him the wrong score. But then how did he do so good in college?
Yeah.
Because he started believing more in himself, more than the program that his parents told him that he's too stupid and he can't do it.
Right.
Right? People have died from cancer. They do autopsy, no cancer cells. Well, where did they get the belief? Well, the doctor misdiagnosed them. So can your thoughts make you sick? Absolutely.
Yeah, of course.
So then he calls me and says, I can't believe this happened. I got my job. He goes to pick up his laptop from downtown Detroit because he's working from home. And he picks it up and he sends me a picture. He picks it up from the Cadillac building. There was a person, he can never go back to the person he was.
Yeah.
And that's what I tell people. It's an experience. It cannot just be through conscious talk where you're going to lectures, which is very important, right? But there has to be a point where you tell yourself, I'm going to make this 1% change. If you read like books like Atomic Habits or Power Habits, anything to do with habits where you do 1%, God then changes things for you.
Yeah.
There was a guy recently, we just did a healing. He had a brain tumor. Nobody, and it was through somebody's prayer. And he says, okay, I'm going to come. Let me see. I'll listen to this guy speak. And then he came after my speech. It wasn't planned. And I said, are you going through some health issues? Like, how did you know? I said, you feel like there's pain. So let's do a healing for you. So we did a healing. He said, man, that is the most love I've felt in the longest time. And we gone back to the issues that we had. He says, I feel really good. And he has a brain tumor. There's a person recently within a different group that I'm a part of that grew back their thyroid that was taken out by doctors. There's so many things that are happening in the medical world that when we realize, when we change our vibration and we change things, just like when people go to the Hajj or the Kaaba or to one of the shrines, that you could actually do it right when you wake up. And I'm just blown away with those testimonials. It's one of the things that keeps it going because that's evidence. That's the loudest voice in the room.
It's so powerful to listen to stuff like that. And listening to you, maybe someone would look at you and be like, this, after this, they're like, Brother Hussein does not go through any problems or any struggles, or doesn't face any challenges because he can overcome all of them. Is that true?
No. So the question is, when we all become emotional, right? The question is, how long?
Okay.
Some person, let's say they get betrayed by somebody and they become emotional and they don't let it go and forgive that person, that becomes a mood. That becomes a temperament. What's wrong? Well, for 2 months I've been this way. Well, that's your temperament. Well, that's your mood. He's in a mood. Then if it goes longer, that becomes your temperament and becomes who you are. We all have that angry aunt or that uncle that complains about everything. What happened? Some traumatic incident. Their brain took a snapshot and they couldn't let it go. And those are usually called energy vampires. When you meet them, you feel horrible when you leave. So all I've learned is how to become emotional less time, where you take time to reflect, to meditate, and say, in a week from now, like we just took our students to the cemetery, our high school students.
Yeah.
Because Hajj Hassan's father, Allah Yarhamu, just passed away. So then I took him to this other grave. So do you guys know, every time I come here, I only see his mom as a young man. Every time I visit my father, I've never seen his friends. I'm sure his friends come. Do you want to know what happened? I said the two were playing basketball. One elbowed the other. They were playing outside of a mosque. And he got mad and he smacked them. People were laughing at him. So he went and grabbed the gun and he shot him.
I remember that story.
Shot him and eventually shot him in the back.
Yeah.
Why? Because he had an emotional event through basketball. He couldn't let it go. He ended up killing somebody where now his mom has to suffer for the rest of his life. Well, let's think about that for a second. If he would have just let it go and they were friends playing basketball, 2 hours later,
They would have forgotten about it.
would they have even cared? You notice how shaitan, things that you hold on to, like you feel embarrassed. Let's say things happen to you and you're embarrassed about it. Do you know nobody ever thinks about it?
Yeah.
When you get embarrassed, you say, I'm so embarrassed I said this. No one ever thinks about it. 18, you're worried what everybody thinks about you. 40, you don't care what anybody thinks about. And then when you get older, you realize nobody's even thinking about you. But shaitan grabs our emotion. That's why the most powerful person is somebody who could control his state, irregardless or irrespective of what's happening outside. And that's what meditation does. It gets you to become familiar with yourself to overcome. Then you pray. Because most people, they pray because they want the sense of relief. And that is their business relationship with God. I said, my God, we have such a long way to go.
What scares you, if you think about it deeply?
The only thing that scares me is I don't die a believer. Because I know I could be one transaction away from doing something where shaitan might think, oh, look, this person just gave a testimonial, they're healed from cancer. This mom just, or this lady that came yesterday, when we did the Saturday program, she says, you saved my marriage. I don't even remember, and that's my biggest worry. And that's why I don't publicize the counsel, because I'm always feared, what if this gets to my head? Because I realize it's not me, it's Allah sending people. But I know if I show people God's way, they don't need anything else.
Absolutely zero.
And when you become solely dependent only on Allah, then when setbacks happen, you're okay. And For me, the people that I like to attract in my life, there's a lady whose husband came home and she put him a 5-course meal because he got a raise at work. And he was surprised. How did my wife know I was going to get the raise? And she wrote him a card saying, I knew you could do it. I love you. Then when she left, there was another card in her that fell from her clothes. And he picked it up, says, it's okay you didn't get the raise. You're always enough for me. So she was ready for both situations.
Yeah.
What a wife.
Wow.
Or that stranger the guy at the airport who takes cookies and a stranger comes and eats them. And there's 5 of them and then there's one left and the stranger takes the cookie in half and gives it to him. And the guy is like so annoyed. How does this stranger just come eat my cookie? What's wrong with him? Then he goes to pick up his luggage to go on his flight, and under his suitcase is his cookies.
Yeah.
They're still there. So the whole time he's eating the stranger's cookies and he was okay with it. And I realize we're so protective as we think we're the owners of things.
And go back to what you said in the beginning of we don't give the other person an excuse.
Mm-hmm.
That ties
Yeah.
back into that.
And that's why I think I'm effective, because like I told you, even with we have a prostitution problem now in our community, outside of the homosexual problems and all that. And just looking at them through the lens of compassion, because who the hell am I to think that I would be better than them?
If you were in that situation.
There's a lady recently who came in and she ran away from home. And the father came in and he says, she's shaitan. I look at him. And after 20 minutes, and I looked at him, I said, I'd run away from you too. Daughter's a straight A student. And then the uncle spoke up, said, finally somebody speaks up to him. In this world, that's what I was going to say, we're allowed to sin. In other dimensions, you can't sin, when you die.
Right.
Why are you allowed to sin in this world? Because what's worse than sinning? Imagine if you never made a mistake. Would you be humble or arrogant?
I'd be arrogant.
Very arrogant. So the reason why you're allowed to sin is to humble yourself, because what's worse than sinning is arrogance. When you become arrogant, that's why sometimes I have a hard time counseling older men, is because somebody will be good in front of you and you'll think they're bad. And you think you're good, and actually you're bad. So this couple was fighting and I prayed. I said, Allah, they're away from you. 2 months later, I do a marriage counseling session.
They were there.
This couple comes in and this lady is talking about how bad her husband is. And I said, you guys look familiar. Do you guys drive this car? Like, yeah. Were you doing this 2 months? And the lady's face turned red. And my whole attention went on her. Then she realized that she was the problem. And it was her arrogance that kept her away. Because of that, her whole life changed. Her marriage saved and so many other opportunities. And I think that's what life's about.
Wow.
Saying, what can I change about myself, irrespective of what anybody does? So many people, when they listen to my lectures about accepting your husband for who they are, not trying to change them and letting them to be, because I'm so anti-divorce in most cases, especially when you have kids, because I see the after effects, especially at our school. Parents are together next year, divorce, you see the way the kids behave. And so many of the divorced women would come and say, man, I just wish I would have just treated him with kindness even when he hurt me, and gave that a try for 6 months. But everybody else was telling me the reverse.
Wow.
And it's true.
So that is a self-realization that
Absolutely.
they should have
Yeah, why not? What do you have to lose?
nothing.
Because I always tell the woman, who are you going to marry?
Your ego is
Yeah,
you
and I
lose
always
that
tell
ego.
women, who are you getting this advice from? My divorced friends. Well, go look at their relationships. That becomes a higher divorce rate when you try to remarry. And then the person and then you have kids, it's such a mess. So why not give it your all? And stop playing this victim. And again, it goes back to the program.
Yeah.
There was one guy, the lady was in a very abusive relationship, and she was pregnant. I looked at her and I had so much compassion for her. And then I called the father. I said, look, can you take her back? Because the father was like, and the father says, hell no. So what do you mean? He said, on one condition, she has an abortion. I said, why would she have, it's 6 months or 5 months, it's haram. So that it messes up her akhirah if she has an abortion. It's the sin. And I said, you even telling me that messes up your akhirah? She says, I don't care. I'm not bringing no black baby in my community. What would people talk about me? You know, we pray for people, but we have this racism that's within us. I always show this video where there's a Muslim guy with a flat tire. It was on a show called What Would You Do? You could pull it up on YouTube. And nobody helped him. There was a woman, everybody helped. White male, everybody helped. Muslim, nobody helped. Then one Mexican came like after an hour and says, I'll help you. Alhamdulillah. He was excited. Just like prayer. You're excited to pray. Not relieved. Oh God, I got to help us. He didn't have that mindset.
Yeah.
When you change that mindset, now you start creating new opportunities. It's the next Uber idea. We've helped people become millionaires just by changing that mindset where they see opportunities. And we have the testimonials for that. So then he helped him. He was excited. The guy goes, you want money? He says, I don't want money. I just want love. Then he found out he was on TV and millions of people have watched it. He says, look at that. Look how a negative turns into a positive. Wanted to help somebody now on national TV. I could have just walked by it.
Right.
What would have walked by it? His body telling him it's somebody else's problem. That's what life is filled with. When you die, you're going to see so many opportunities where the angel says, why did you walk by this? Why didn't you pick up this piece of garbage here? Why didn't you allow this parking spot to go here? Why didn't you help this stranger here? And every time they listened to their body, they gave themselves a reason. It's not my problem. It's not my fault. It's their mess. Well, God says those are the only ways that you could have elevated yourself. And we're all one moment away.
It's through other people's service.
Service, and even if it makes us uncomfortable at the time, but you don't see it as uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Look, even if you open up the door for somebody and they don't tell you thank you, will you feel good or bad?
Personally, I don't care.
What do most people feel?
They feel good. If someone says thank you.
No, they don't feel. No, they don't say thank you.
They feel bad.
Yeah. So that means their ego opened the door for them, not themselves. Because if you open a door for someone, they don't say thank you because they could be having a bad day.
Yeah.
Maybe they said thank you, didn't hear you. We've lost the ability to give an excuse. I always tell the kids, you go home, pizza box is full, empty, and you're hungry, but your mom tells you take out the pizza, even though you're hungry and you couldn't eat any. You're always going to tell her, Mom, it's not my mess.
Yeah.
Imagine if your mom told you that when your dirty diaper, when you were in the crib, said, that's not my mess, disgusting. She never did that. She changed it out of love. We've lost the love of helping others. Now imagine you see somebody on the street with a flat. It happened to me recently. I'm driving to Lifetime, and I see a black lady with her flat tire out of her car. I said, that's kind of weird. So I'm driving, and I said, man, I always talk about this, flat tires. I got to go back, or else I'm going to feel guilty. So I go back. I said, how long have you been out here for? She said, 20 minutes. Nobody's helped you? She said, no. I said, okay. So I take out the wrench, I jack up the car, I take out the screws, and I try to pull out her tire to replace it with the spare. I cannot take the tire out. For the life of me. I'm pulling on it, I'm kicking on it, it will not move. I see, man, I need like a rubber hammer or something. Within 20 seconds of me saying that, a white male comes in this convertible white car and pulls around, says, it looks like you need some help. He opens up the trunk, and what does he pull out?
Rubber hammer.
Rubber hammer. He comes, he gives it one hit. He says, you're good to go, but goes back to the car. I tell him, thank you, I changed the tire. And I was blown away. The question, if I didn't ask for that, would have happened?
No.
And that's what people have to believe. What are you asking for? I always help people get married. I said, okay, you're not married, you want to? I said, what do you want to marry? So I want to marry somebody who's wise, somebody who's generous, somebody who's positive, somebody who's compassionate. Good. Write them down. Okay? Now, every day you wake up, make sure you're those four things. And ask Allah to bring somebody who resonates with you with those four things. And watch what happens. Why would you don't find love, you attract it. You don't find money, you attract it because you're already abundant. People have lost that ability, and that's where faith, that's why public schooling is a problem, because they don't have that faith component. Look at drug addiction, 70% increase if you had faith within the moment. It's like what I told you before. We're talking about three-pointers, Stephen Curry's in the room, and we're ignoring him. We're talking about God's creation, we're ignoring God. That's the biggest absurdity ever.
Yeah.
That's why tell people, just start having a relationship with God. If you don't pray and people don't pray around you, pray, don't tell anybody.
Yeah.
And just do baby steps. If you don't eat good, eat a little bit better. Why? To get closer to God. I had this one guy lose like 100 pounds. I said, it's going to be somebody else taking your daughter to her wedding, not you. You're going to die.
That's tough.
So every time he's about to eat something, he thought about that moment.
Yeah.
But the best moment is the next life. To anticipate, what am I doing right now that could be taking me away from a moment that's going to give me infinite joy? And tell me what's worth that. And my biggest fear is that I'm doing something so stupid to take me away. Because when I die, I'm none of these things.
No, inshallah, that doesn't happen. That was it. We're almost done. There's a question that I asked everyone, and I never got the chance to ask you. The podcast is called Not From Here because me and you originally aren't from here. So I'm interested in knowing how you or your family ended up here.
Well, actually, I was born here. My parents are originally both of them were born in Lebanon. And my dad was born in Beirut. My mom, I think, in Beit Jbel. And it was actually my mom. So my dad was a rice dealer. He used to sell rice. We used to live in Africa. But my mom saw that the way of life, what was happening, that wasn't it. So she migrated and brought her whole family here. And that's why we ended up living with my uncle. And at the time, my parents weren't together.
Okay.
And they separated. And it was my mom's vision and her strength to migrate a whole family with basically nothing. Like I told you, I used to take pennies to school. And it was her vision of the future and not being scared and just trusting God. And she'll tell you so many emotional stories where God just played his hand. But she took the step. And people at the time were telling her it's unrealistic. You can't do it. It's too hard. And I think that's the goal. You have a vision that's so amazing that people look at you as if you're a little bit crazy. It's too unrealistic. And when she did that, it taught me a lot of valuable lessons.
You learned a lot from that.
Yeah, because it taught me what true strength is. You know, strength isn't lifting 200 pounds over your head or doing certain things. True strength is staying principled even when things are not going your way.
Yeah.
That you still keep up your prayers. You still don't lie, steal, and cheat, even when you're at your worst. And what's interesting was my mom sacrificed her whole life for us. You can never repay it. But then I wanted to get married. So that lady that came to Hajj Hassanan's lecture the second day reverted back to Islam. I decided to want to get married. Well, remember, my mom's Lebanese, so the culture of marrying somebody outside of the Lebanese was taboo. But it was my mom's forgiveness for my dad. And my dad came back and lived with us. And he came back in our lives. And then I had my dad meet my wife. And he fell in love with her. I said, oh my God, she's the most amazing person. And then when my dad went to my mom, because my mom had a deep love for my father, that's what opened up her heart.
Yeah.
And because there was a time where it was like, I had scholars come to me and say, your mom will never accept. But I prayed because I had a condition. I will not marry my wife if my mom doesn't accept. But for some reason, I knew I was not going to marry a Lebanese. I just knew it. Like sometimes my mom would have like a Lebanese woman at my house trying to get to know the family. I'd like sneak out of the window because I knew my heart, the destiny was for something else. And I ended up marrying a person that was okay for me starting these projects. Because imagine if my wife would have told me, you can't start the youth program, you can't start the school, you can't start the after school, you can't start the speaking. Just focus on the family. Both are breathing to me, right? It was because of my wife that we're allowed to do these projects.
Everything came for full circle.
Full circle. And it was my mom's forgiveness for my dad and accepting him that really allowed it. And that's what I always tell people. People have hurt you, but it's because they were truly hurt and they couldn't give you something that they didn't have. So stop looking for it.
Yeah.
And when you live that way, you're completely free. And then you become solely dependent on God, because you realize everything's just a manifestation of God. You just need him. But you need that experience to strengthen that belief, to reprogram yourself.
Thank you so much, Brother Hussein. This was very nice, very insightful. You made me rethink a lot of things that have been going on in my head.
Right. And hopefully I made you even treat your wife even a little bit better. So
Inshallah.
your wife's going to like that part.
Inshallah, inshallah. Thank you.
Thank you so much.